Oh, I'm very excited for this talk today, and thank you very much, Jenny.
Likewise.
So, the talk today is about the indispensable importance of diversity as social entrepreneurs, as for the 21st century. And today, I am very glad to kind of host this kind of conversation with you, Jenny. And first of all, before we even go into the topic, do you want to tell me a bit more about yourself and also your role in?
Of course. I'm Jenny. I am one of the two co-founders of the Newsroom, and the Newsroom is a Portuguese startup which was born a year and a half ago with the objective of fighting online misinformation and promoting plurality of thought. So definitely the role of diversity is quite relevant for everything we do within and outside the company. In terms of my background, I have background in business. Before starting the Newsroom, I was working in something quite different. I was at Google in the sales business. But my co-founder and I, well, first of all, we're both quite big news geeks, and we were very frustrated with how the news was polarizing people and the trends we were seeing in society. And so we decided to try and do something about it. And that's pretty much the principles on which the newsroom was born.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that beautiful story and a little bit about your background as well. And just to explain from my end who I am, for those who may not know, my name is Wei Rong, and I'm the founder and CEO of Raw Culture. And what we do basically is we connect international skilled people and talent from all across the world and connect them to also equally global mindseted companies who believe in their experience and their background. And we make that beautiful match. Um, Personally, I come from a media and communications background, but what I love about what I'm doing is I get to connect people. And I think that's the most important thing throughout this journey so far. So that's a little bit about both of us. And now we can slowly dive into the topic. So it's going to be a casual conversation just like this. So you can just tune in, grab a coffee, I don't know, some apples, and listen into our conversation. So the first question for both of us
Mhm.
is, why are we actually discussing this diversity topic, right? So many people have probably discussed this already or heard about this, but why are we talking about this topic, and why is it relevant to speak about this right now?
Well, I mean, for us, as in for me and the newsroom, the role of diversity is absolutely crucial in the sense that what we advocate for as a company is diversity of thought. So whenever you are engaging with news or with content around about what's happening around you, it's massively important for you to try to listen to points of view that are different from your own. That doesn't mean you have to change your mind. It doesn't mean you're wrong or you're right, but it's just we live in a complex world, and it is necessary for you to understand actually what is going on, what are the different perspectives on it. And so for us as a company, having diversity at the core is pretty much the reason why we exist. Now, why you and I are talking about this is, from my point of view, we connected over an online event, and we started talking about the importance of diversity. And I think the two of us have very complementary points of view on it. And I think it's a beautiful conversation to have because at the end of the day, we're both working on diversity from two quite different lenses, but they go in the same direction, at least from my perspective.
I love
How
it.
about you? What do you think?
You're actually already early on a question that I have for you, but that's fantastic. You're always in advance. For me, why I think it's relevant, this diversity topic, is because, I mean, let's actually go back or even go to now, where kind of, let's say, calling this post pandemic era, everybody is just working differently than before, drastically differently. So there's a difference in the kind of work atmosphere, work environment, but as well as the people that we get to work with. And so I think overall, in this kind of time we live in right now, people are so much more open to experience diversity, right? They're more open because actually of the need to be during what happened. And so for me, I've always embodied diversity because I grew up in a diverse kind of background, more or less. Just a short, brief kind of background story. For me, I was born and raised in Budapest, and my parents are Chinese. I went to American school growing up. That's my English. And then currently in Austria. So that's kind of like a mix. And so right now with that pandemic, with what's happening now and before, like when it was really on the peak, people are recognizing that, hey, we've got to change the way we think about things. And it's so unique to have this kind of diversity and perspective. And so I think our discussion today and the fact that we both bring in diversity in different formats, as you already mentioned, Jenny, this is a very timely topic. And also because of the so many benefits and innovations it brings that we can go into a bit later on. Yes. And so my next kind of follow-up question is, how did you start Newsroom? Why did you start it? What was the beginning story of it? How was it born, basically?
So, the Newsroom was born as a company in December 2020. However, I think in my mind and in Pedro's mind, Pedro is my co-founder, it was born much earlier than that, in the sense that both Pedro and I were working in tech in Dublin, and starting like 2016, 2015, 2016, when we were still in university, we started talking about the role of the media, how influential for the good and for the not so good it could be, and how conversations with people around us were getting more and more polarized. And so all of a sudden there were these topics that you couldn't talk about because otherwise you had the certainty of getting into a fight and losing your childhood friend or your uncle or aunt or whatever it was. And we both had the very big luck of growing up in families that were quite the opposite, in the sense that everything was always up for debate and everything was always accepted, at least as a point of view to bring, even and especially when they were different from our own. And so we were very frustrated with the problem, and we spent years talking about it at dinner, during coffee, whatever it was. And then COVID arrived, and this thing that we had been talking about for ages became an urgency, and it became a responsibility that we felt, in the sense that we were both very passionate about it. We both had the conditions at the time to be able to leave our jobs and risk it all. And so we had a little bit of the thinking of, if not now, when do we do it? And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Because we have all the ingredients we need. So that's when the Newsroom was born. It was born out of frustration and passion at the same time, for the two sides of the medal. And I would say that's it. That's how it started. Then we started completely with different ideas from where we are right now. But we have been evolving over time. But still, that foundation still is very much there, and it is at the core of everything we do. How
Did,
about you? Why did
yeah.
you start?
Did you just mention, by the way, frustration and was it excitement or
And
frustration?
passion.
Oh, yeah. That is a really strong duo. And
Yes.
I can say that a lot of the big startups and companies, they start with those combinations because they want to solve a real life problem that happened. And to answer your question, similarly from my kind of story of why I started Raw Culture, it was also from my own personal challenges and frustration, so to say. So basically going and scrolling back to what I said before of me growing up quite multicultural and diverse, so to say, I felt like I was a part of Hungary, where I was basically born. But people outside, people who were not from my kind of, or didn't look like me, were telling me a different thing. And they were like, no, but you are Chinese. How could you be Hungarian? And even if I explained to them that, I was born here, I've been my whole entire life in Hungary, there still would be a distance I felt, right? In the conversation, the relationships I have. It was never the same relationships that I could have as a local would with a local, right? And I just felt
Mhm.
very discluded in all the kind of conversations, relationships that I've kind of tried to build up there because I felt like I belonged, right? But then I was constantly kind of pushed back in that sense. And then fast forward, I wanted to understand what should I do with my life? Like, what should I do with, my experiences thus far? And I felt like very discouraged and felt like I did not know a path. And that for me, I would just probably just follow my parents and perhaps continue their business, for example. And then I had this conversation with a couple of people who had my shared background because we went to international school, so that was a good experience. At least having people to talk to about this problem, and they also had kind of worries or kind of unknown, let's say, vision of what it would be like for them to pursue some kind of career. And so basically, coupled with that, and then coupled especially with the pandemic coming through, I then experienced a double down on this loneliness and the feeling, especially during the pandemic, of being judged, of very direct kind of prejudice and racism towards me, without knowing a single thing about my background. And this happened in both Budapest and also in Vienna. And these were like the places that I've been my life, right? That's the only place I kind of call, let's say, more or less physically home. And so I just felt kind of down. And I basically, from then, I was like, okay, if I feel this, somebody else feels this too. And there's got to be something that, or something, a little change to that. And so I started by building then, first of all, just a simple website. And it was a blog that allowed people to share about their experiences and their challenges with similar backgrounds like me. And then now it evolved to what it is today, which is helping people connect with their skill sets, with their experiences directly to career opportunities. So that was my personal journey. That was my personal story. And I see beautifully in both of our stories, there is a deeper sense of frustration and personal connection to everything, which is where all the great ideas root from. Yeah. So that was a bit deep, but now we're going to go and
But it's a
transition.
beautiful story.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's again where the story starts and begins. Yes. And so now my next question to you, Jenny, is like what kind of problem initially when you were thinking through what Newsroom could be, what problem was it that you wanted to solve, right? How did this what was the problem? That's my simple question. Yes.
I mean, the problem was and still is the problem of misinformation online, and misinformation can take very, very different shapes. So you can start from the extreme disinformation campaigns in which uh, we come up with something that is completely false. But it can also go into biases, omissions, and the result of that is basically dividing people. So if I'm showing you something around abortion rights, gun control, Russia, Ukraine, you name it, depending on the way I spin the information, you're probably gonna get a very different opinion on the matter at stake. And that was always the case. That's always been the case with information. So I don't believe in the fact that anything or any technology or anyone can be completely unbiased. But exactly because of that, the only solution that I see, at least, is allowing people to make up their own mind and to decide what
Mm,
they want to believe, what they trust, and what they don't trust.
yeah.
And in that perspective, bridging gaps between different perspectives. So let's say I have two different publishers that are talking about the same event, but they talk about it in a very, very, very different way. There's always going to be something that they have in common, and that is probably the closest you can get to a fact.
Mm,
But at the same time, And well, actually, on that, the fact that there is some element in common is something that we tend to ignore, in the sense that if I read publisher A, I'm smart. If you read publisher B, you're not, and vice versa. But that's not actually true. That only the content we consume, and there is always something that we can start from to have a debate. It's not like we live in two different planets. And
Right.
that more and more is something that we're missing. The media has become more polarizing. The technology has been aiding it madly. And with this, I'm not saying that the media is bad if the technology is bad. I just think that some of the aspects of it need to be reimagined. And that's what we are trying to do. So the objective with the newsroom is to bring people together through the news, and instead of driving them further apart, because there's always going to be something you can start a conversation from with a person that thinks very differently from you. However, in the past 20 years, we've been more and more convinced that that is not the case, and we're trying to revert that.
Mm. Wow. Powerful.
How about you?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Just wanted to comment on what you just said, because
Mm-hmm.
it's also a reason that kind of impressed me about what you're doing in your work. Not only because I come from a media communications background, so I know in real time how much the media can distort and change our perception, but the fact that you are giving people like a choice to be able to be informed at least which direction they're going to be taking and what directions there are. I think that is kind of the power that you give the people, right? The freedom and the knowledge
Hopefully.
and the consciousness and the awareness, same word, to choose how they want to perceive the news,
Exactly.
things around them. So I love that, and that's also, I guess, now me fast forwarding to the question that was upcoming, but since I'm already addressing it now, the reason that we kind of connect, because we have this kind of relation in perception in what diversity means, and what diversity means in terms of events and news and information, and what diversity means in terms of people, right? So that's kind of how I see brings us together for this topic and this discussion, and I'm very much enjoying it. And okay, long story. So now answering the question, from my end, the problem that I still see, is that from one end, as someone who I felt, as mentioned before, like I couldn't give something, in terms of I didn't feel confident in what I've learned so far. I didn't think that my cross culturality, if that was a word, was ever going to be useful. If that's something that could differentiate myself, I just felt like, I was just like that, and that's it. And I did not have anything that I could bring to the table compared to everyone else. And a disclaimer here, doesn't mean if you aren't from a cross cultural background, you know, you are not unique. The whole idea is that I, through my work, want to highlight people who have cross cultural backgrounds who think that they don't have anything unique. And that's something synonymously that I found out from my personal background, and having done 100+ interviews with people with my shared background, and them feeling like they're less than, when there's so much more behind them and their experiences. And then connecting this to the other end of the story, which is the companies and the scale ups that we work with. They are the ones who are trying to find people who have a global facing mindset, and of course an actual experience in those countries and cultures, right? So this kind of problem with um, perhaps a combination of lack of awareness and confidence, because of the lack of awareness of what we have, and the company's end of just not having talent that matches their values, that brings them the global aspect that they need to grow their mission, is a problem that I see. And that's something that we're trying to solve on both ends, I guess, parallel. So that is the answer to the question. Yes.
That's really powerful, and it's actually very important, what you're mentioning, because it's it's hard definitely for both ends. I don't come from a multicultural background, so I don't really know that side of the coin, at least not from direct experience. But from the point of view of a company, I completely agree. So I think you're working in a very exciting space, and I'm very eager to see what it's gonna what it's gonna become in the next months and years.
Likewise. Thank you. um, and this brings us to our next question.
Yeah.
And this is, so what do we, the question is, what do we actually do in terms of in raw culture, in newsroom, with bringing people or our kind of customers closer in terms of the benefits they receive? What kind of benefits or advantages have we offered so far to the people that we want to serve?
Shall I start, or do you want to start?
Please, you're
I
my guest.
start? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I covered this in previous questions as well, but basically, we have a mobile application, and we have launched it in May of this year, in a closed beta. So we have a few hundred people testing it out right now. Um, and what people get on the newsroom is, on the one hand, um, news without a lot of the noise. So when I told you that if you look at the news, there is always going to be an element of commonality, of things that most publishers will agree on,
Mm,
and an element of divergence. We start by giving you a super quick snapshot of whatever is happening and that most publishers agree on. So the three things that you would not need to argue on whenever you're talking about this event happening. And
yeah.
then we allow you to progressively deep dive. And so you are fully in control as a user of the amount, the depth, and the diversity of the content that you consume. And so
Mm,
basically that means that from that snapshot, you can get a slightly longer summary, and then the different perspectives that we have been talking about so far, as well as the historical context behind it. So you are in control of how much time, how deep you want to, how much time you want to invest, and how deep you want to go
mm,
when you're engaging with information. And in a nutshell, that's what we do. And it ties very much with what we were discussing a minute ago, the element of diversity, the elements of empowerment that are very, very key for everything we do. How
fantastic.
about you? Tell me about it.
I love it. Thank you for wrapping it up in a nutshell. Yes, about us. So I think, or I mean, I believe that what we're doing with raw culture, yes, we are in the HR space, but on a grander scale, we're providing more awareness to the topic of cross culturals and multiculturals living, particularly in Europe. And the reason why I distinguishedly say Europe is because I've had my fair share of going up here, but also have had my fair share of doing interviews during my research process of building raw culture, of the comparison of the attitude and opinions about multiculturality, of people who were born into different cultures, and what people perceive of that. And I have been very lucky to be able to be maybe the first or even second person to even, let's say, pop that cherry for them, for people who've never heard of people like us in our background and have no idea how to deal with us in terms of our experience. Like, often I hear, if I, compare a traditional, let's say, resume with someone who grew up, let's say, in Austria, went to university here and studied here. That's like a good resume that the companies would accept right on. But then if you compare it to mine or somebody else's who, lived across cultures, who perhaps had a gap year because they traveled and wanted to explore the world a bit, it's a bit of a less traditional experience And people and companies are a bit less open to accepting that kind of a character or that kind of a person to join because they're unaware and they're not conscious about what that means. And so on a grander scale, meta level, we're through our topics, we're trying to break into it and make this such a normal thing, just like how gender diversity is slowly coming through in Europe. Hopefully it's going to be faster, but I think what I'm doing here in Europe is, first of all, and then specifically wise of the candidate end, people who are like, again, also I mentioned this previously, I feel like we are not only providing the opportunity to connect to the companies, but also we do free workshops, events just like this, like we're discussing today, doing programs. We just did a mentorship program a few weeks back, and that is all for free for us to be able to show that we are trying to serve a group of people and that we do care about their development. And so they're not just here for that short kind of journey where, you know, we just connect them to the company, which is obviously important and why they're probably here. But also we want to make sure that they feel like they are heard and there is like a medium that reflects their personality, right? A medium where they understand, here, I'm a cross-cultural, I'm multicultural. This is a place for me to gather around with like-minded people and for me to talk about career, which is very specific, but there's a place for that. And for the company end, it's to be able to have access to these skilled, exceptional talent who match the, basically who are able to match the vision that the companies have, the multinationals, in terms of their vision of what it's like to cross collaborate and work beyond their scope of local kind of work, and to make their mission even bigger with people who have that, who have those perspectives and in real life experiences. So that is my end. And we are slowly wrapping up because it's already about half an hour. It was a lovely talk. But the next follow-up question is, how can people actually, so we talked a lot about what we do and why we do it, but how do people actually then, if they're interested, to get involved in Newsroom, right? How do they actually live your mission? If they believe in it and they're convinced right now through this discussion, what should they do to be Newsroom's #1 fan?
I mean, there are many things they can do. That's the bright side. The first thing is definitely joining our community. We're still starting out, but we are progressively getting where we want to be, where we want to go. So definitely follow us on social media and sign up for the app. You can head to our website, which is the newsroom.ai. You drop us your email and you will receive an invite code to test out the app. That also means you will receive a newsletter from us. It's every 2 weeks. I promise it's a lot of fun. It's really, really interesting. So you will not be bored by it. And in case you are, you can always unsubscribe.
No, it's fantastic.
And,
yes.
And if you want to get directly involved, you can definitely reach out to me. I am Jenny, co-founder of the Newsroom. It's very easy to find me online. And I'd be very, very happy to have a chat with you.
I love
I'd
it.
say that's it.
Thank you. That's the whole package. So there's no excuse now for people who don't know where to go, right?
Not at all. Zero.
Fantastic.
How about you? How can we sign up for Raw Culture?
Sure.
And
So
follow you?
Likewise, we have a website. So our website is joinrawculture.com. So basically our name of our Instagram and then .com. And there's really just, it's right there when you log in. You have an option as either a talent or as the company to sign up in less than 3 minutes. You input your details very quickly, why you're here, what kind of things we can support you with. And then we have that in our system. And we will contact you only if we see there's a relevancy to what you're looking for, right? So we're not going to spam you. Be sure of that. we make sure that it's quality over the quantity that we deliver. So if you do get information from us, it's we really try to make it as relevant as possible. And beyond the website, we also have our social media. So this is Instagram, of course, and we also have Facebook. We have LinkedIn. We have YouTube, and those are the main channels. So you can find us there. And the cool thing is that you'll be updated if you follow us on those channels, because we post the most recent information all on our social medias. So stuff like this today, and upcoming exciting things that are going to be done, you'll all hear from our social media pages. So that is a wrap up. Thank you for being here, Jenny. First of all, I really enjoyed the conversation. It's a conversation like anything else. And I think it's important that we do continue with what we're doing, because it's amazing, and we need somebody who actually does it. Even though it's not obviously a smooth, sunny journey always, but
Not at all.
and that's the reason we're doing our work, because it's not easy, and that's why people like us are trying to do something with the little thing that we have, but hopefully it's. And so yeah, thank you everyone who is here, and we would also basically put this up on our Instagram afterwards, so if you want to rewatch, feel free to do so. And you can also, when you rewatch, pop in questions in the chat, because we would love to answer it even afterwards. Also going to be available on LinkedIn as well. So whatever's comfortable for you, we have a solution. And that is the wrap up. Any words from your end?
Wonderful. No, that's it. I love the conversation. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, if any of you has any questions, I'd be very, very happy to get back to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jenny. And for everyone,
thank you
for joining in. Have a good day or evening or
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.